sidewalk, in this case proposed to be 8 feet wide, just like the one on C Street. And it's intended for use by pedestrians and bicycles. And of course, if someone wants to roller skate down it or, push a child in a carriage or something down it, all of those types of uses, non-motorized uses, are allowed on that. And then, of course, the new driveway and the water main. Right now, we are, there is a fair amount of lighting already in the project area. But putting in these additional pedestrian facilities, it makes sense to augment that lighting where we can, striking a balance with not making it overly lit, because that can be a problem with light pollution. So at this point, our plan is to basically infill on existing utility poles lighting where it doesn't already exist. Typically, every other utility pole in this area, for the most part, has a light on it. And if we add lights to the ones that currently don't have lights on them, that should provide the type of lighting we need in this area. And also, toward the end of the project, we're planning to resurface at least that part of the project from Gosnell Street to the south end of the Yachtsman condos. Largely because we are going to make some geometric modifications to the street in that area. It's still going to be pretty much where it is. It might shift a foot or so in some locations to keep it centered within the town right-of-way. But we need it to be shifted just a little bit so that we can have proper pedestrian access paths on either side on the shoulders of the road. And this next slide is meant to provide an overview of what we've just gone over. So starting from north to south, the very first thing on the north, that's the top of the image, it's dashed because that's not really part of this project, but I wanted to mention it in this discussion. Another project that we have planned at Snow's Creek right there, where Snow's Creek crosses Ocean Street. We are planning and in the process of designing a new culvert. The existing culvert is very old and needs to be replaced, not only for improving the infrastructure, but also for improving the tidal flush in that ecosystem. That's an upcoming project, but it will. The reason I wanted to mention it here is that when that project occurs, we will also be extending the sidewalk there as well and providing an overlook for people who want to spend a few minutes there or however long there and look out over the water. But anyway, our project that we're discussing today really starts at that white line where the words say sidewalk or shared use path. That is going to be on the east side of Ocean Street, just along the back of that rail fence at Veterans Park. And then that progresses to the area that progresses all the way past Gosnell to the south end of Veterans Park, where there is that access drive to Highness Yacht Club. From there, really the only pedestrian facilities that are feasible at this time, given the narrowness of the roadway and the parking immediately off the edge of the road on either side, is to provide shoulders, paved shoulders, They're going to be, in most places, about 5 feet wide. In some places, they might be as narrow as 3 feet, so that pedestrians can obey the state regulation that says if you're not walking on a sidewalk, then you need to be walking on the left side of the road facing oncoming traffic. Numerous studies have shown that that is a much safer condition for pedestrians, so that they can see if someone's not paying attention and swerving into their area, they have some time to make a corrective maneuver. But there are a couple of spots along there that show up in red, and those are a couple opportunities where, even though it's going to be a short section of sidewalk, we'll put a sidewalk there so that for that 50 feet or however long it is, pedestrians are even more protected because they'll be on a sidewalk with a curb to protect them. Then just south of the Yachtsman condos, and so that would be the, right about here is, we've gone from up here to here, and I'm sorry, I haven't been paying attention with the pointer here. But at this point, the whole rest of the way in this undeveloped area of Ocean Street and then alongside Calmus Beach, that's going to be an 8-foot wide shared use path, which I've already described. That's pretty much the preferred type of pedestrian facility when you can fit it, and here we can. It's on town land, and that will largely coincide with where the water main extension will also be, connecting from a fire hydrant here to the existing water main down here. And then we've sketched in this new driveway. The old driveway will be closed off. And again, this is motivated primarily out of traffic safety concerns. Someone pulling out of here will be able to see a few hundred feet north and a few hundred feet, or a couple hundred feet south, which is definitely an improvement over the current driveway. So now we have images of the plans, the detailed plans up here. I'm probably not going to hit on everything, and again, afterwards, I've got a roll of the plans. We can roll them out. We can point and talk. But here I'll try to hit the high points. So I went north to south while I was showing you that schematic, but now we're going to reverse. We're starting off here at Calmus Beach. And here's where the existing entrance is, and here's where the proposed entrance will be. In here is a sewage pump station. We're going to add some more vegetation to improve the screening on that, the visual screening. This entrance will have a sidewalk. And we'll also have some stormwater runoff facilities on the edge of it. And while this will eliminate several parking spaces here, some will be gained over in this area. There's probably going to be, at least initially, probably fairly minimalist landscaping in this corner that gets created here. Most likely it's going to mimic the beach vegetation that's right next to it. The actual planting of that is technically outside of our project, but it will be done when this is completed. It will at least be seeded until that beach vegetation or some other decision gets made for this area. I think that's everything to note on this slide. So here we're in that area between the woods on the east and the marsh on the west of Ocean Street. And here is where that shared use path is shown. I'll go back and highlight that here as well. It's a little bit harder to see here, but we'll run all the way down to the beach, and there happens to be one of those openings in the beach vegetation right there. So this area heading north, the Yachtsman condos are just off the picture here. We are proposing a crosswalk in this area to facilitate. There are a number of residences on this side, and again, anyone in this area heading southbound, until they reach this shared use path, if they're on the east side of the road, they should be facing. Let me make sure I got this right. Yeah, they should be facing south, so they would be walking along here. But if they're walking up this way, when they reach this point where there's no longer a shared use path to walk on, they should be walking on the west side of the road, which would, to them, moving northward, would be the left side of the road, facing oncoming traffic, as we saw one individual doing in that video earlier. So here's the the densely developed area with the Yachtsman condos on one side and the other residences on the opposite side of the road. Again, this illustrates those shoulder pathways. These will be within the town right-of-way. They're right next to the Yachtsman parking or the opposite side of the street parking, but they will be within the town right-of-way. They will not be raised. They'll be flush with the pavement. People can drive over them to get in and out of their parking spaces. But they will also be used and available for pedestrians. And some of the markings that we will be putting down, namely there already is a white line on the edge of the travel lane. We're going to add a second white line. It shows up as yellow on here, on either side at the back of that pedestrian shoulder, just to help pedestrians and drivers have a greater awareness of people using that as they cross the various parking areas. All right, so progressing north, down on this side, this is part of the Yachtsman condos, and then that ends right about here. This is that access drive. It's actually town-owned that serves both the Yachtsman condos and Highness Yacht Club. This area right here is the south end of Veterans Park Beach, or Veterans Park. And you can see where the intersection of Gosnell, there already are crosswalks there. We're going to enhance them a little bit just to make them more visible. These will be 10-foot travel lanes throughout this project. That's approximately the width of the lanes now, and that's a safe lane width that promotes appropriate speeds through areas like this. And you'll see this meandering off-road sidewalk here will continue northward through Veterans Park. And here's the northern stretch of that, where again it will be near the road but offset from the road. And here is where it traverses JFK Memorial, and there'll be a crosswalk at this location for people who are walking either way on the opposite side of the street and wish to get to this location. I'm almost done with this part of the presentation. Here we are in the winter of prior to spring in 2023. We need to do a little bit more work to complete the design and permitting. The permitting will be submitting a notice of intent to the Conservation Commission. Our project will not be affecting any wetlands, but in some places it's within the 100-foot buffer of wetlands. So we're required to submit that. We're going to, after the bid package has been put together, we'll advertise for bids. Hopefully we'll get competitive bids. We'll see. And then we'll kick off the construction activities. Over the summer, the town normally does not allow road work between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and that's the situation here. So really, in the fall is when the bulk of the work is anticipated to be underway and completed. Project funding has already been appropriated by the town council. There's $480,000 appropriated for that water main improvement, and just under $3 million appropriated for the rest of the construction that we've described here. We should note that there are a couple of other upcoming projects in this area. Many of you know that Gosnold Street is going to be repaved and the sidewalk improved. That's anticipated later this year, in the fall. And I mentioned earlier in this presentation about the Snows Creek culvert replacement. Again, that's under design. It still needs to go through permitting and bidding and so forth. We anticipate that construction will occur in 2024. At this time, I'm not sure whether that will be spring or fall. We need to see what the permit requirements are. Sometimes there's time of year restrictions. We don't know that yet. And again, you don't feel like you have to jot that down real quick. It's on my business card if you want to pick that up. It was on the meeting notice for this meeting. And again, that's February 27th is the date by which we hope to receive comments, if you have any, please. By email, again, just because that tends to be easier for everyone than U.S. mail or whatnot. That's not to say don't call. You can call me if you wish to, but it's a lot harder for me to transcribe your comments. It's probably best if we receive them in your own words. And again, the presentation materials will be uploaded to the town website. And before we end, we definitely wanted to acknowledge the assistance and the advocacy that OSNet, stakeholder group, has provided. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe OSNet stands for Ocean Street Neighborhood Enhancement Team. And you know, as noted here, they've conducted a number of meetings with residents, other stakeholders, town officials and staff. They've provided input on suggested scope for the project. They've helped us distribute information for meetings such as this. And a couple other groups who also have been noteworthy in being advocates for this project and assisting us with design ideas are Yachtsman Condominiums and Highness Yacht Club as well. So we thank those individuals and groups and appreciate their advocacy and time on it. Now we've reached probably the most important thing. Do you have any questions or comments? Please. Yes, sir.
I saw the term used in some of the correspondence about a square rotary. That was a little confusing to me. That's just a four-way stop.
It's a four-way stop. Did I say square rotary?
No.
Did I?
No.
I'd be very surprised if I did, but no, it's a four-way stop. It's a four-way stop, yes.
Maybe somebody told me it was square rotary. But,
Maybe I said it.
very confusing.
Maybe I said it. It's an interesting term. Oh, yes, sir.
Would there be any consideration to possibly speed bump at all towards the southern end? I know it's Ocean Street, it's becoming Ocean Street International Raceway, south of the Yachtsman. And I'm just thinking, we're all talking about pedestrians, maybe it's potentially a good idea to consider a speed bump out there.
To your question, great point. There has been lots of discussion about that. And certainly some people have indicated they want that. As engineers, we all, we have to weigh what people want, but we also have to make choices about what we think is the best thing there. The speed tracking that the police department didn't show a predominant problem with speeding there. And typically we don't put speed bumps, certainly not speed bumps on public roads, even not speed humps. There are some roads in town that have speed humps on them. Those were put in the past. They're largely not as effective as you think they would be. People tend to speed up right after them. So it has limited value and it has some drawbacks for maintenance, emergency vehicles, and so forth. So our decision has been that we're not putting in any speed humps.
I was even thinking potentially a raised sidewalk,
Right.
which I know they've done in cities like Somerville and Cambridge.
And it's a great point. We have done that here in at least a few places in town. Those have been limited for the most part to very busy village centers like you see up in Barnstable Village. And they've been part of a corridor wide, or at least, center of village corridor wide management plan, traffic calming plan. And to just put one in isolation isn't really, by itself, it might have a little bit of benefit sometimes, but it's probably not going to solve the problem that you're describing.
The speeding actually happens prime time, daily, but dusk on, I'm not saying it's a racetrack, but seeing that people may be using more sidewalks and passage there while all this construction is going on, can it really do that much harm by adding a speed bump? That's all, no big argument, I just thought I'd bring it up.
Oh, sure. I mean, we want you to bring things up. I'm sorry, I forgot about the microphone. So now we have to repeat all the questions that we missed. So your question, sir, was, is there? I'll get back to you. Starting with him because I forgot to do the microphone. Yeah. So your question was, is that a four-way stop intersection at Gosnell and Ocean? And You are correct, it is.
But somewhere in writing, I saw the terminology square rotary, and I was totally confused. I don't know who wrote it, but I saw it in writing.
I can understand that, and as a connoisseur of oxymorons, I gotta raise my glass to whoever came up with that. And then, sir, do you want to repeat your question, and I'll try to summarize the response?
Into this. I was just wondering if it's a good idea to consider implementing a speed bump on the southern part from the Yachtsman down, because not during necessarily prime time, but after hours, it can become a raceway. And I'm out there and I hear it, I just can't believe the ignorance of some people to be racing on that roadway. And if we're gonna make it so more people can enhance and use the street, even when it's dusk with lighting, I don't think it would hurt. And I just thought of the fire department having to use access, would that be a hindrance to them? But I think overall it might be a good thought, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I did already respond earlier, but it's appropriate to ask that question and to have that idea. Again, there's some nuances to it that at the end of the day, we don't think it's the best thing there. But I do appreciate the comment. Yes, sir. Oh, hold on until she can reach you.
My name is Tom Ojakjian. My guess is, as people are walking towards the parking lot, they're going to take the new entrance. And I thought you still had the sidewalk continuing all the way to the end of the street. My guess is people are not going to walk to the end of the street to come in. They're just going to take the cut through. So why not make the sidewalk there instead?
And I get what you're saying. For people who are going to the beach down by the bathhouse, that part of the beach, they'll have to walk all the way through the parking lot. Yes, they probably won't take that spur at the very southernmost end, but some people we know do use that part of the beach. So we're going to provide that there as well.
Okay. Or even if you were riding your bike, would you come in the new entrance?
If you're on your bike, you could pick either option. Yep, yeah. So, though I get it, I get what you're saying, but we're going to provide both options. Well, I think he had his hand up first. If you're able to reach him.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one pertains to bicycle use. Now, over on Ocean Street, in the C Street Beach, the walkway there, bikes are at least discouraged, if not prohibited. Because I'm not aware, there are signs along that walkway that put a slash through the bike symbol.
Oh, if I may, I think you might be referring to the boardwalk section.
Yes,
The boardwalk is not intended for bikes, but the entire length from Keys Memorial Beach entrance to Main Street, Hyannis, is absolutely appropriate for bicycles to use,
okay.
And they do.
Yeah, and the second question is, seeing as how you're tearing up the street for the water main addition, which does make a lot of sense, why not extend the repaving down Ocean to the entrance?
It's a good point, and I was remiss, I didn't mention, the water main is expected to be off the edge of the paved portion of the road. So we're hoping, we won't know for sure if we're going to impact a little bit of the road or not, but we're going to try to keep that off the paved portion of the road there. Yes. Hold on until she can get to you. She's reaching you.
Oh, look at that. When you did C Street and you narrowed the street, it really slowed down the traffic. I'm wondering if that couldn't happen in this project to calm the traffic without putting speed bumps or anything. Just make the road narrower. What I see almost every time I walk on Ocean Street, which is 3 or 4 times a week, is there are many cars with single men in them, and I don't think they want to be seen. I think they're doing one of two things. I won't tell you what they are. If they don't, one car goes down the street, and about 2 seconds later, another one does, and they race down the street together. They go to the parking lot, and sometimes they stay, and sometimes they turn around and race back. There's a lot of racing going on. I thought it was just drugs, but I think it's something else.
Well, you make a couple of good points there. So on the narrowing of C Street, I too observed that did have a dramatic effect for most people. You know, there's always going to be outliers, but for most people, it did slow drivers down, at least predominantly. On Ocean Street, the travel lanes themselves were already narrow. If we had the opportunity to also, as we did on C Street, have curbed sidewalks on either side, then that further constricts the roadway and gives people, at least visually, a feeling that it's more constrained. In this area, we don't necessarily have that same opportunity. For example, along the marsh, we're not doing any work on that side of the road because it's too close to the marsh. Between the condos and the vacation homes on the other side, or residences on the other side, again, we'll have a couple of spots where we can put in short sidewalk segments, but for the most part, we can't because of the just off-street parking there. So it's a mixed bag. It's probably not going to calm traffic as much as C Street did, because C Street has the curbed sidewalks immediately on either side. But we'll do what we can to keep it narrow. And in fact, where we're putting in the shared use path south of the Yachtsman condos, keep hitting that accidentally, to Calmus Beach, along there, we're planning to put in a continuation of the timber rail that already exists down at the beach. We want to make sure that people can't park on the shared use path, but that rail being next to the road may help to foster that feeling of closed in a bit and help some drivers to slow down. And then as for your other concern, if you're concerned about anything that might be illicit, then you would have to call the Barnstable Police Department and report it.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, I know.
I see squad cars in there all the time.
I know.
Drive in, turn around, and leave.
I know.
Love is love.
There's a lot of demand for the police. Someone else? Could you walk over here? This gentleman.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, Dan Schialetti from the Yachtsman, Paul. Couple of things, if I could, just to support the gentleman's about speed bumps, okay? And to your point that you just made, it is very narrow, which does help slow down a little, but the fact that we have two shoulder paths rather than two curbs,
Yeah.
like C Street, I mean, it's a huge difference. I think, too, recognizing, and I understand how you want people to be able to face the traffic, and you need those shoulder paths on both sides of the road. But, I'm very concerned about the east side, okay, where the Yachtsman is, and where you have the walkway now extending down from the Gosnell Ocean intersection, meandering through the parking lot, right to that access road, which is extremely busy during the summer with the yacht club, regattas, people going in and out drinking, et cetera, okay? And I think, that's about a 50-foot wide access road, as you know, right? And not to mention that access point, but also the two Yachtsman access points going south, okay? I'm very concerned about the amount of traffic that's going to be going down there, and hence more of a reason to have speed bumps if we insist on having both shoulder paths on both sides. And then again, if you're going to have the meandering walkway, I would either say get rid of the walkway or get rid of one of the shoulder paths that's also running parallel to the meandering path, right? Why do you want to have two access ways going down the east side when you really only need one, you know? And I think having the walkway, the meandering, of course, there is a lot of parking that's used. You are going to be using up a lot of parking. That's typically what it's used for, that field, in the summer on the hot days. And I'm just concerned that we're encouraging access going down that way and then having to cross that town access road, which, like I say, is extremely busy, you know? And I'm concerned. I understand, you know, it's a safety issue one way or the other. I know you want people walking into the traffic, but at the same time, we're going to have to cross that access way as well as the two yachtsman entrances. And I think maybe, you know, it makes sense, and also from a cost point of view, to really have the walkway end right at the Veterans Park entrance, right then and there. And if you're going to have the shared, the paths, if you will, they were going to be extending all the way up to that intersection anyway. And then if people wanted to stay on that side, the east side, they could enter the roadway at that point rather than further down at the town access way. I think it makes more sense to enter that, and that would be a safer situation. Just my opinion, you know. But I want to go back to the speed bumps because I really think those are important. As the first gentleman pointed out, the police department doesn't see it, but we all here see it. And as soon as dusk comes, I mean, I'm in the back building and I hear them racing up and down and then doing wheelies out in Calmus parking lot and then coming back down through Veterans. So it's a very serious problem. And I know the police have done, you know, some analysis, if you will, and we kind of shook our heads when we were at the meeting with the chief saying, you really didn't find these people speeding because we see it and hear it all the time. And I know particularly where Alan is, especially, I mean, I'm surprised they haven't gone into his house, you know. It's a very serious situation. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'll do my best to respond. So the off-street sidewalk in the southernmost part of Veterans Park provides an option. If someone wants to be off-road for that additional 100, 200 feet, they'll be a lot safer than if they're walking on the shoulder. On the other hand, if someone, depending on where they're coming from and going to, the shoulder might be more convenient to them. So we're giving them both options, and that shoulder is going to be there regardless anyway, because the shoulder is defined by the edge of the northbound travel lane and the right-of-way line, which in some places is evident and in some places isn't evident. So it's going to be there regardless. So we're giving people those options. And trying to recall what else. Oh, and at the Yachtsman, I should say HYC access drive, I don't think we had it on the version here, but we're planning to mark a crosswalk across that driveway. And yeah, no, I don't think it was. And we're going to see if we can narrow that driveway a little bit. We need it to be wide enough for vehicles, two-way traffic to access. But like you said, there may be an opportunity to narrow it just a little bit. So if we can, we will. And I appreciate your comments. Oh.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight. I just have a couple of comments, I guess. The first is that although traffic has slowed on C Street, the residents on C Street think it's just as fast, if not faster, because what happens is when you narrow a roadway, it looks like people are going really fast. And in the beginning stages of it, I had, people out there with radar guns and, checking speed, and they were going 35 instead of 30 or whatever, and so just be aware that as the road shrinks, it still seems like people are speeding. Okay, that's one thing. The other question I had was, I'll just lay them all out and maybe you could answer them. You didn't mention what kind of lighting we're talking about, and I'm hoping that they'll be beautiful like the C Street ones and like the Burses Way ones, and the height of the C Street ones, not the height of the Burses Way ones, so that it's a promenade and not a boulevard sort of a feel. And then the third thing was, I've been seeing, granted not through any sort of verified sources, nothing but social media, but different sorts of 3D paint, like that provide optical illusions for curbs and sidewalks. And I'm wondering if we couldn't paint something that makes it look like it is indeed a 4-inch, 5-inch curb, when in fact it's flat. And I think that might solve the speed bump issue, or at least alleviate it a bit, because I know it's a really attractive thing to say speed bumps will just solve it, but at 5 in the morning when the landscaping trucks are bumping over those things constantly all summer long and they're waking you up, you're not going to be psyched about it. I have a lot of complaints about that in my precinct too. So just some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So to the 3D paint, that's intriguing. I'm not able to answer that right now, but we'll look into it. It's intriguing. And the lighting type, so when I described it earlier about infilling lighting where it's not already on the utility poles, the thought would be to add lighting that is consistent with the lighting that's already on utility poles. So right now, about every other utility pole has what's called a Cobra head light on it. And, there's all sorts of options that we have for lighting. If you mix and match lighting, it may or may not be a desirable effect, but certainly interested in your opinion.
My opinion is that it should be as beautiful as C Street. And it should have, I don't think we need Cobra lighting outside one of our prime properties and in the most beautiful section of Hyannis, arguably. I think that, we really need to have beautiful lighting there, just like Burses Way, I think all of the stuff that we're redoing should be beautiful and modern. And these guys have met ad nauseum for such a long time. And these are the details that, really make people feel good about their town. And I really feel like that is of the utmost importance to make the final project look gorgeous for them. I just can't say it enough, and I'll call whoever I need to call.
I certainly appreciate that. So the part of the thinking is that at several of these meetings previous that I've been to, people said they don't want it to look like C Street. So I'm not saying everyone said that, but a lot of people at those meetings said that. No. Oh.
We see a show of hands of these people who would object to Ocean Street looking like C Street.
Yeah, right here.
You object? Yeah. Could you tell me why?
I think it looks like a circus.
So I'm sorry, ma'am. To your question, I heard you ask something about you want more information about these lighting types, right? So the type of lighting that went in on C Street is it's got black coated poles with an arm and a globe for the light unit, and they're spaced probably less than 100 feet apart in order to provide the illumination levels that one would normally design for in a project like that. Some people like what got put in and some people don't, so it's a mixed bag. And so, as you can see in this meeting, there's a tension. Some people want that and some people don't want that. And there's pros and cons, so it's not a clear cut, I can't just do a little equation on a piece of paper and say the right answer is X equals Y, because a lot of it is subjective. But we're certainly open to the comments.
Well, and also, we have the public comment period that's going to be open through the 27th.
That's true.
That's the purpose of that, is to get that kind of input.
This gentleman.
I have a question for you. What have you budgeted for lighting in this project? Have you budgeted for decorative lighting or have you budgeted for Cobra lighting? Because therein lies the answer. Because if you don't have it in your budget, you're not going to put in decorative lighting. What's budgeted?
We did budget for decorative lighting because at that stage in the project, when we built the budget, we had the understanding that most people would want that. So we do have it budgeted. So that's not a constraint in this case. Again, it's trying to provide what the consensus position of the people who live there and are going to be experiencing it all the time, and then looking at, do you really want poles every 50 feet, or if they're bollard-style lighting, which was suggested at one point for the shared use path, they're probably going to be more like 50 feet apart. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but some people might not appreciate that in the more natural areas like the park and like the wooded area headed down to Calmus. So we're certainly open to input, and as Griffin said, please don't hesitate to send us your comments, and if you can explain why you want what you want, that's even better. And we definitely have heard the people in the room tonight, and again, even in the room, I'm not hearing a clear-cut consensus, but we certainly want to do a project that everyone can be happy with. We need your help with that, please.
Hi, this is Paula Garrow, and I'm an owner at the Yachtsman and also on the OSNet committee. And as one of the members of OSNet, I can speak to the lighting. We like the Cobra because it's more natural. And that area has osprey in there, in the marsh area. And we felt that it's just more natural and not bringing, though those other lights are pretty, it's just we were trying to keep with more of the natural environment. So it's not one's right or wrong. It's just keeping with more of the natural environment and not bringing a lot of light. Just keep it natural. I do have a question, and Paul, not to really hound you with this, but to speak to what Ed said and others have said. That is a runway. I live in Easton, and I know we've spoken about this before. We put rolling tables in my town, and there was traffic problems, and they're small, not speed bumps where you go over them. They're small rolling tables. I myself went to every business owner and asked them, has it helped? And they said it's made a tremendous difference with the traffic. Each and every owner. So I do think it should be taken into consideration, please. Every one of these people, most of them live right on Ocean Street, and it's terrible. And I'm really worried somebody's going to get hurt. Really, we walk there, we live there, and I don't see why we can't consider this a rolling table there. I don't understand. Thank you.
Could you explain a rolling table? What is a rolling table?
Looks like a square.
It's a small, it's not a big high speed bump.
Yes.
It's smaller, but you make it a crosswalk, and it's smaller, so.
Are there a number of them, or just the one?
So it sounds like a raised crosswalk, what we would call a
It's a
raised
raised crosswalk, but it's enough that it slows people down. So you don't have the fire trucks or the landscaping trucks making all sorts of noise, but it's enough that people will stop and slow down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan Feltham, I live on the Indy 500 on Ocean Street. I'd like to agree with most of the points that Paula has raised. We've discussed the lighting in the OSNET meeting several times. People don't want a lot of illumination. They want to keep it natural. And I think your idea at one of the meetings about having Cobra lights on every pole is probably the desired option. With respect to the speeding, there is an area as you go down to Old Colony and hang a right going up Highland Street. There's a kind of a cobblestone effect. It's not a speed bump. It's I don't know how you describe it. It's like a cobblestone area. And that might be effective in 2 or 3 places. It wouldn't cause the landscape trucks to bounce up and down so much, but it definitely slows you down. As you go up that hill, you know that those cobblestones are there. So I don't know if anybody's thought about that. I was just thinking about it now, something to look into.
I appreciate you mentioning that. So a similar device might be called a rumble strip. You know, you sometimes see those rippled concrete pads that, you know, prevent people from going fast across, you know, a turn or something like that. But we'll give that some consideration. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that those accentuate tire noise. And if people are going fast, it's going to be even more noise when they go over the rumble strip. Think if you've been on the highway and you drift off and you hit that rumble strip on the side of the highway.
I think if you had one at the HYC Drive area and then again at the south end of the Yachtsman, that's enough.
Yeah, I mean,
because it truly is a speedway. I know the police statistics. I've seen them, but both you and I engineers, we know that metrics can be deceiving. Not intentionally necessarily, but they can be deceiving depending on time of day, frequency of measurement, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I've lived there for eons, and that is a noisy, speedy area.
yeah, the idea has merit. It's got pros and cons.
Now's the time to do it while we have the opportunity, because
And-
after this, we won't.
I totally get that. And to your point about metrics, all the studies I've seen anyway, you know, from Federal Highway Administration and so forth, there's a whole suite of traffic calming measures, which include some of the ones mentioned here tonight. The typical miles per hour speed reduction for just about any of those traffic calming measures tends to be about 4 miles per hour or so. They're not a panacea, but we hear you and we will look into that. We'll look into
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Trish Conti. Highland Highway, what you're referring to, people drive around it so they don't hear the noise, or they're bumping in their cars. They drive around the damn thing, and now it's a one-lane road. It's useless. You ought to pave it over, please. So my real question is, at the new entrance of Calmus, how much vegetation and trees are you going to take down for that entrance? And are you going to leave shade for the gate attendants who have to sit out there for 8 hours a day in the summertime?
Well, I appreciate your question. I'm not sure that I can, in a quantitative way, answer it in terms of I don't know offhand how many trees we're going to take down, but there definitely will be some. And the gate attendants right now aren't in a shaded spot other than their hut. That's going to be the same situation. Unless something's changed, the last time I spoke with recreation folks, they told me they're putting their hut in the same general location that it's always been. So
At the end where you're closing off that old gate. That's
right, so
where-
that will be closed off, and where this new driveway comes down, when it meets the parking lot, it's pretty close to that same spot. So I don't think we're going to be able to have trees shade their hut, but they're not shaded now by their own choice. They have to have the hut in a place
hut would
where
have to
where
be-
vehicles can drive up to it and past it on either side.
At the entrance, it's always at the entrance, so you have to check their, tickets to see if they
Right.
have a sticker or not.
Right. It won't be at the entrance end by Ocean Street. It will be at the end of the driveway so that vehicles have space to queue. Yeah, I suppose we could bring that back up. So the hut is going to be somewhere here, which is, they don't want to have the hut here because then vehicles will queue on the road. Instead, the intent is for vehicles to be able to queue in this driveway, and the hut will be down here somewhere. Recreation has it's at their option where they want to place it.
Yeah.
It's not part of this project. It's they'll put it where it's most convenient, but they told me when I met with them that, quite naturally, it's going to be somewhere down here where the driveway meets the parking lot. And that's not an area where we're going to be able to provide tree shade, but we do plan to the extent we can, minimize tree removals, but you'll see that in building this driveway, there's going to be, if you can see the aerial photograph superimposed behind this, there will be a number of trees removed in order to create that driveway. We will, where we can, this will be a new vegetated area here on the corner of Ocean Street and Halls. It probably won't have trees in it because the intent is to mimic beach vegetation, which is fairly low. But where we can, we will mitigate for, this new driveway as opportunities provide.
Will the old entrance have any space for people who are walking, pushing carriages, bikes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will be able to access either headed southbound. Say they'll be able to either directly go onto the beach through one of the footpaths there that already exists, or they'll have a way to get into the parking lot and make their way to the beach house and so forth. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Alan Bechtel. I live at the Yachtsman condominiums. I'm not convinced necessarily that we need this walking path between JFK and the Yacht Club entrance, that street. But if we do, I see why we'd put it on the inside of the fencing through Veterans Park. But once we cross the entrance to Veterans, I don't think it makes sense to keep it inside the fencing at that point to the the Yacht Club driveway. The reason for that is, one, there's a premium parking there, particularly in regattas and so forth. I don't think you need it there. Leading to that point, it's very elevated. It's like a hill before you get there, but then it's flat once you get to the entrance to Veterans. So you could have a curbed sidewalk between the entrance to Veterans and to the entrance to the Hyannis Yacht Club, by putting that on the street side of the fencing. So you say parking there.
Yeah,
It's
so that
also-
bright area, as you know, is parking, designated parking. You're saying some people park in this grassed area.
Yes.
And yes, we are planning to put that through there.
Right, you're going to have them walking right where people are trying to park.
Well, yeah.
So, but
We've
what I'm
gotta
saying
go-
is,
We've got to go around that. And
what I'm saying
you're
is,
right, though, that we'll
if you-
have to find a way to make sure that that is.
right, but I'm saying
safe.
you can bump to the sidewalk because it's flat there. You could build one with a curbing there. And then when the pedestrian gets to the Hyannis Yacht Club entrance, they'll have they've moved away out a bit from the entrance, so they'll have much better vision because there's cars parked there. If they walk on the inside of the fence, they're going to walk right through the parked cars, and it's going to be a little treacherous. But
Right.
but
We'll-
you're going
we'll
to save
find
a
a
lot
way-
of parking, and you're going to,
We'll find a way to separate the parking from the
Okay.
sidewalk. Yeah.
just my thoughts.
Whether it's another rail fence on the back side of the sidewalk or what. We'll make it safe. But I do appreciate your comments, and we've heard at least a couple other people have that same one. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.
Please feel free